Welcome to Spiritual as Fuck,
Spiritual as fuck.
where spirituality meets the real world. I'm Liz Volpe, social entrepreneur, psychic medium, teacher, and founder of the Intuition Academy. I am passionate about inspiring people to dream big and change the world.
I'm Diane Driscoll, a coach, facilitator, keynote speaker, and self-directed healing practitioner. I am fascinated with all things science, spirituality, and self-leadership, and love the journey of incorporating my spiritual gifts into my life and business.
We share real and raw spiritual stories, give you a safe space to challenge what's normal, and have some serious fun along the way. If the podcast isn't enough, we invite you to our monthly online events and workshops with some of the world's best spiritual teachers.
Plus, join our Spiritual Renegades community and get bonus episodes and lots of exclusive content. Everything you need to be spiritual as fuck. Before we welcome today's guest, we would like to remind listeners that tickets are now available for our upcoming channel event on the 18th of September with self-directed healing founder Claire Besley. All of the information is in the show notes. Today's guest is the incredible Rebecca Campbell, who has been on our wish list forever. Rebecca will be known to many of our listeners for her beautiful oracle cards and books. Rebecca's books, oracle cards, courses and workshops have been translated into over 20 languages, and she has supported hundreds of thousands of people to change their lives and answer the call of their soul. Just a heads up to listen to the announcement at the end of the podcast to learn how you can be in with a chance to win a copy of Rebecca's upcoming book, Your Soul Had a Dream, Your Life Is It, and how to get your hands on Rebecca's top 3 tips for a spiritual awakening.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. We are here with another episode. We know you've been dying for it because we get your messages all the time. And today, I have to say, Diane and I are extra excited. I know that we've mentioned a few times when, right at the very start of the Spiritual as Fuck podcast, we kind of came up with this wish list and daily, manifested these incredible people. I think John Edward was the first one that we managed to get off the wish list, which was just so exciting. But the beautiful Rebecca Campbell is here today, straight from the wish list into real life for us. Welcome, Rebecca.
I am honored.
No, super exciting. And we have so many questions today, and we know that you've got your book coming out, so we're going to definitely talk a lot about that. Mm-hmm. But I'm really interested to kind of like rewind time to start with. Because, when we're all on spiritual journeys, everyone has a little bit of a different backstory. When did your spiritual journey start? Like when you look right back, was there kind of one particular pivotal moment where you suddenly were like, I'm really spiritual. What happened?
Well, I think I'd always had the connection or the yearning for the connection. Didn't know that was that everyone didn't have that. Like I used to, I remember I learned to pray for my grandma and my mum as well. And I would do it and I'd do it in my normal life. Like literally before I was quite sporty growing up and I did athletics and different sports and I'd pray to win the race. And,
yes.
We're going to bed at night, I'd pray as well. Without it being like a properly learned thing. So I always yearned towards that. I always remember having this connection, like particularly when we'd go away on summer holidays, camping, and we'd do the long road trips. And I was at my most I loved that state I got into when I was in the car, like in motion, watching the world go by and kind of going into my inner thoughts, having like a journal and all of that. So I always had like that kind of, I guess like longing to connect in with the unseen or the deeper part of me. But it wasn't really until, and I suppose this was quite young, but in my teen years, I had a couple of experiences that literally made me be like, whoa, I really need to explore this and follow this. And there were a couple of women who had lost children who I was connected to. It's such a very weird kind of setup as a teenager with like a 50-year-old or whatever. But yeah, there were a couple of really serendipitous moments where that happened. And I don't do mediumship work as I've not personally been called to do that, as in I see myself as a creative. Like what I love doing is creating and connecting with the unseen and making creations. But what really initiated my path was mediumship. Like I would connect with
Wow.
particularly children who had passed. But it's interesting because I've got 2 young kids at the moment. And it was after I had my son, my mum, I had really bad mastitis and ended up, so I had a home birth, but then as my milk came in, I had mastitis that turned into blood poisoning. Like it was like I nearly died kind of thing. Went to the hospital. And when in this kind of altered state, came back once I had recovered a couple of days later. And out of nowhere, I'd asked my mum about my birth. And I had said to mum, tell me, like when she was always being like, you came really fast, you came early, that was like the details that she gave. But something about, I think, me having just given birth, it kind of just opened up a memory maybe for her, or maybe she'd always remembered it, but just not said it. But apparently, when I was born, there were more babies than beds in the hospital. And so at first we were like in the corridor, like literally like as mum was about to give birth and stuff. And then we ended up going into a room where I think mum and dad had private health insurance. I think like they through my dad, he was a teacher. And so they were meant to have a room on our own or whatever. But it was so crowded that we shared a room, but we were sharing a room with a mother who had just lost a child. And so like, as I was like literally in my first moments and I'm crying and it's basically, so there's celebration and death all at once. And my cries kind of brought in her milk. And so it's this kind of opposites of life and death all together. And I've only just recently found that out. I actually write about it in my new book. And hearing that story it's like it brought it all together, because I look through my life and my life is filled with all these incredible women who have had incredible grief and lost babies. And for some reason or other that I never understood, I was brought into their life and we formed these amazing relationships, and their loss opened up a whole world of spirituality and searching and, wanting to ask those bigger questions of life. And it was almost like they brought me along the way with them. So, because I was too young to kind of go to workshops on my own. But they would take me. I remember going to my first, my publisher is Hay House. I went to, they used to do these huge I Can Do It events. They still do them, but back in the day, they were massive. And I went to my first one in Sydney with one of the mothers, Angela. She's now passed. And I remember her like whispering in my ear saying, that'll be you one day. And so it's such a,
my God.
It's so hard to kind of, like I would have said a different thing a couple of years ago, but this is what I mean. It's amazing about the spiritual journey. The threads just keep on revealing themselves. I don't know if you guys have found that.
Oh, yes.
Without a doubt. And it is that tuning in and being receptive to those signs and things coming through. It's so funny. I knew this was going to happen on this interview, that I had a million questions, and here was me trying to be prepared, and it's like all out the window.
You just have to go with it. Conversations.
I love when you say that you are a spiritual creative, because you do have this mediumship ability, but it's still the creative side, because I guess I'm so used to like just the beauty of your oracle cards, and like, I mean, they're just instantly recognizable, but just you're always continuing to create, whether it's cards, whether it's books, whether it's within your membership community, all of those things that you're putting out into the world. And there's just such beauty within them. But how did you come from, I guess, this spiritual journey that you were on, and this I guess overlap or intertwining path that you could see between you and whether it is the birth of life or the loss of life, into creativity? Like, where did that, suddenly come into your life, that all of a sudden you knew, I need to do something with this, I need to create, I need to put something out into the world?
Well, I think, again, it's quite layered as it always is, but growing up, my mum was a fashion designer and very creative.
Oh,
And so creativity was just so encouraged. Like for me, because say compared to my husband, we've got kids now, and he's like, they should be able to paint their room and basically do all these things that I'm like, yeah, of course. Like, of course you
yes.
should do that. And so I'm really seeing how much creativity was encouraged for me. And I ended up I did have visions early on, like before I finished school, of the work I do now. But
Wow.
Oh,
as you
wow.
can imagine, back then, uh, it didn't really exist in the same way it does now. So I didn't
Yes.
fully understand it. And I remember like going to my kinesiologist, and I'd have all these people who were guides along my way, and being like, my understanding of the work, doing spiritual work, it was my own only direct experience was like these big people who'd written books, but they were like much, much older than me, and
Mm.
properly lived a life, versus me as a teenager. Of course I hadn't. So I couldn't see that being a viable path. And then also, then there were body workers and stuff, but I knew that I was here to create as well. So I couldn't put the two together. It was also kind of weird. Like now it's not so weird, but it was definitely weird then. So I kind of had a bit of a double life, to be honest. And the creativity route seemed like the most straightforward.
Mm.
I remember when I went to my career advisor when I was, you're trying to figure out, well, what should I do? I ended up going to university, but I didn't know what to do. And I remember saying, I think I want to do like psychology or social work or whatever. And she had known me quite well, and if we track back, like at that stage, I was like, I was literally sitting next to grieving mothers for hours on end. It was really I hadn't learned how to
Yes.
transmute that at that stage. Like
Mm.
I was, without knowing, and no one was telling me to do that. I just didn't know what healing was. I didn't know any of that stuff. It was literally
Yeah.
learned by experience, and then actually learn the foundations to all of that. But I remember just sitting there and being like, I just want to take this pain away from them. And so it was quite heavy for me. And I remember my career advisor saying, I just don't know. I think it's just going to be too hard. Like, do you really want that? Why don't you do more like this? Because I would dance at school and I was very creative. And so I think I was just influenced to go that direction. And yeah, I did a year at College of Fine Arts, found that a little bit too airy-fairy and vague, and so ended up going to Charles Sturt in Bathurst, because it doesn't really exist, the training, the degree that I did then, but back then it was really great. It was very experiential.
Yes.
And so and so I did that, majored in advertising and theatre media. So it was like comms. And yeah, then ended up going into a career in advertising as a creative. So my job was to come up with ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because my mum worked in the corporate world, I had I didn't have any kind of restrictions in what a woman could do, for sure. Like she was like very successful and just like, was a worker. And I'd
Yes.
been raised to work hard. And yeah, so that's probably the thing that I've been recovering from the most, because I love working
Here.
hard. Yeah, oh my God. I love it as well, though, especially when you love
Yeah.
what you do. So yeah, finding the balance is not straightforward for me, but I know it's in my best interest to be a little bit more balanced. But yeah, and when I moved to London, so my job literally was to come up with ideas. I worked as a writer and with an art director, and then I did art direction as well. And so I learnt all these amazing skills in communication, but through creativity. I'd have to come up with hundreds of ideas and only one would get chosen. I'd come up with thousands of headlines and only one would get chosen. So I really, as a sensitive as well, I learned to be tough. Like, there weren't many women as well at that stage. I'm sure it's a little bit different now. But it was a man's world. And so, yeah, I had to learn to toughen up. And rightly or wrongly, there's a lot of stuff that I had to recover from from that environment, but there's a lot of gifts that I learned as well. And one of them was the ability to, like, I'm never dry of ideas. Like, I can write under any circumstance. Oh, there are circumstances that it flows way better, but I don't have those blocks that I probably would have had I not had that kind of training,
Yeah, that's incredible. There's a lot of people who are really jealous right now who are suffering with creative blocks.
Well, it's the best creative work I do, and I found this out from trial and error from that stage, where we would work in creative teams, and I can definitely work in creative teams, and I've got a team that I work with now, but I've realized that as a channel, what I need to do is find the spark from within, and the best place I can do that is in nature or walking. So I'll pretty much write all my books walking in nature. Not all the time. Like, obviously, when I'm creating and I've got a baby, like, it often comes like in the middle of the night when I can't put them down and they're in my arms. I'm like, oh shit, let's do a voice note or something, But yeah, but then I'd have to go into work and do my time in the cubicle under the fluorescent lights, but I would have already done my best work along the beach. So yeah, it was those conditions that were, but now I don't use the space of the office, but I think it's the confidence that brought me, because I think the biggest hurdle with creativity, I think, is fear of getting it wrong. And then also not following through. So it's like having this stage or space where you come up with lots of ideas and you let it flow, because I do think creative ideas are wanting to be born, and that we're all experiencing the flow of that in some way or another. And so, but if we're just like, we have to have the right one, it's not going to flow. So you just let it flow, let it flow, let it flow, and notice when there's there's something there. Put them all up on the wall and sort them into, this is a definite yes, this is heading towards the no, and in order. And then once you've got that resonance, then it's like, right, I gotta get to work now. So it's similar to like intuition, I think, where
I was just about to say that.
Download. Yeah. But an intuitive hunch or inner knowing or vision or whatever is pointless unless you act on it. So it's this combination. And I think that's definitely what I got from my parents, who I would say would be, I don't want to say they're not spiritual, because I think everyone is, but not in the way that I maybe innately was or was drawn to express it in that way. But they're very grounded and very like, let's follow it up. Let's, acts of service, hard work, all of that. Yeah.
I mean, when you look back, you can kind of see the breadcrumbs and how everything's been laid to kind of get to the point of, becoming an author, and with everything that you've done. And when was the point that you kind of officially came out of the spiritual closet, as you'd say? Was there a moment where you were like, that's it, I know what I am now, I'm ready?
Well, to start with, I still don't know who I am. As in,
oh, thank God, me neither.
There's two parts of that. There's two parts of that. Who am I? Because I'm always changing and always becoming. There's that. But I think in the context of what we're saying, it's like, what the heck do I call myself? I still don't know. Like, mystic, yeah, but people don't really understand what that is. Artist, people think that's just painter. Creative sounds a bit wishy-washy. Teacher, that's what some people say I am, but I'm like, doesn't really encapsulate. So I do not know what to call myself, and I don't know if I ever will. And I think especially as a creative person, an artist, mystic, whatever, what I do know about me is that my path, whether I like it or not, is about going direct and having a direct experience of the sacred or the unseen. It's always been very physical. It's always been, just like whenever I've tried to just follow one particular path, which is like a external path that, like I've so wanted that to be my path, just doesn't work. Doors just don't open. So,
Yes.
yeah. So, and even now, like I feel like I'm at this point where I'm like, okay, so I could continue doing exactly what I've been doing, or do I want to express myself in different ways? And I'm like, oh God, I think it's the latter. What
There we go.
like just when I thought I understood, now it's, and I'm sure you guys.
Oh, I need to jump in here because I didn't know how to phrase this exactly, but I think one of the biggest thing that I noticed, and I love that you've just pointed to it, this kind of moment in time or this kind of, whether it's a course correction, a change in direction or something new that is being birthed. But my first thing that I noticed, so your book that is that's on pre-order at the moment, it'll be released in November, correct me if I'm wrong. But so you're
October 28th.
yes.
29th, October 29th.
29th. Yes. Yeah, maybe it was my delivery date because I'm already
Oh, right.
pre-ordered. It
Yes.
was in
You're
November.
a day ahead in Australia as well. So maybe that's it.
So the book, your soul had a dream, your life is it. So what I noticed first of all was, so I know you, like I'm a very visual person and I love all of your beautiful pastels. Like I'm even looking at you now on screen for anybody who's watching the YouTube video of this. There's so many pastels, so much femininity, so much beautiful subtleties in the artwork that surrounds you. And then if you hold up your book again, it's quite visually different.
Black.
Yes, it's black and white. So talk to us a little bit about, I guess, the origins of the book, like just the journey of the book.
Well, to start with, the book was originally due to be released in 2021, and it had a different title at that stage, and it was called Returning. And then I went through, the book actually starts with this mystical experience I had, which anyone who's watching rather than listening, behind me is a picture of an oracle card that I co-created with Danielle Noel in my Starseed Oracle, and the card is called Fall Into My Arms, and it is a depiction of a mystical experience I had in 2017 that just completely changed my life. Again, you think that you have experienced a dark night of the soul and you're like, okay, I got this sorted. Like, I think I understand the path and all of that. And then boom, you're hurdled to go deeper than ever before. And that experience really changed everything for me. And I wasn't able to even find the words to describe how it had changed me and was changing me, but it really, it invited me onto a different part of the awakening journey, which I have been tracking, which I call the descent, where, earlier stages of awakening where we kind of like, might experience the Kundalini rising, where there's an upward expansion, there's the mind awakening, the heart awakening, the energy, an upward motion. And then I think that expansion that is caused in those stages of awakening creates a space for the soul to come more fully into matter, to the physicality.
Oh, wow.
And I really believe that this is happening for so many of us right now. Like it wasn't just happening for me. Like so many people I know this has been happening to, where we come more fully into our body, to our humanity, to the earth, to the human experience, and recognize that we each hold a thread for the healing of humanity. It's not even the healing of the earth, because like the earth doesn't need us. Actually, it's the opposite. It really doesn't need us for that. And so there is this real shift that is happening now. And what this experience really did, and this part of the journey, it is really the dark night of the soul, but it's the return to the feminine, the return to the mother, the return to those darker, more feminine. Now, people think that darkness is the end. People think that darkness is like a bad thing. It's not.
Mm, no.
All of life begins in the darkness. Straight after that experience, I became a mom for the first time, and then I became a mom. Well, I was pregnant again. I lost the baby, and then I became a mom again. And so I wrote all the way through that. So as my body was literally knitting soul into form, I was writing this book, and it was just revealing itself as I was.
Wow.
And so talk about threads being woven. All of that time I have been writing without quite knowing exactly what the book was, but I was like receiving it for me,
Yes.
through me,
Oh,
for
my
us. Yeah.
goodness.
So, and it really, it changed me fundamentally. And it really just embraces the polarity of the human experience and the different stages. And I see that what's happening with a lot of us, like we've all experienced this with whether it's COVID, whether it's what's happening in the world with ecocide, genocide, all of these things that we are witnessing every single day. If we are to keep our hearts open, which I do believe that we're meant to, we have to descend into the human experience. How can we
Yeah.
keep our hearts open through that? And it's actually, through honoring endings, through embracing change, through loosening our grip, through accepting that change is inevitable. Death is inevitable. But if we allow that to happen, metaphorically, we know we're going to have to experience it physically, but if we can allow that to happen metaphorically, then rebirth can happen. The change is going to happen regardless. And so,
Yes.
yeah, this book, the reason it's black is because it is about as you open the book, it says, people think the darkness is the end, but it's also the beginning. Has your soul been scheduled to go deeper than before? So it's a depth book for sure. But it's a rebirth book, a transformation book as well. And yeah, it's interesting because since I had that experience that changed me so much, I was stabilizing that energy in my body, in my system. And I just knew it wasn't time to talk about it because I was processing it myself, learning still from it myself. And I'm definitely not one to teach before I've embodied it, and but this one took
Yes.
me a long time to embody. Like I was just like, what the heck? And I think that's why I've created so many oracles in that time, because I found it easier to transmit that energy through like the format of oracle cards, working with
Yes.
artists, rather than, I think with books, people see it more like teaching, and it just wasn't the time for it. But yeah, it looks really different, the book. And it's
I
been really
love
tricky
it.
I'm currently like working on the stuff to put on social media and stuff. But it's interesting this process, because I'm like, is that on brand or is it not on brand? But I'm like, but it's fine
Yes.
because I've changed. But it's interesting,
Absolutely.
as we change, like we're not meant to be the same. And
Yes.
I'm sure you guys have
Yes.
experienced it from with the social media world and content and all of that. Like the moment you think you know who you are, you've already changed. And people's projection of who you were is like way
Yes.
behind who you actually are. And if people are like, you've changed, you're like, yeah, naturally. But they're like, you're not who I thought I was. And you're like, I'm not who I thought I was either, because I'm changing constantly. And I think I've personally found it really tricky to navigate when you are going through big changes, and particularly like the deep undercurrents of like midlife and those kind of dark nights of the soul, which I think the whole planet is going through, to be honest.
Yes.
So hard to find the words to express it. And yeah, so
Yeah,
it's been a whole process.
that's a challenge. I mean, I can only just imagine. And now I'm even more eager to read this book because, everything that you've just said then feels like my last 5 years.
Same.
And I honestly daily, I will sit and ponder for at least 5 minutes a day, like, what am I? Like, what am I doing? But last week I thought this and now I'm this. And I think the challenge for me has been just to kind of, surrender and go with that flow of that ever changing and the different seasons. And what I would like to kind of focus on quickly is this dark night of the soul. I've experienced many dark nights of the soul. And what's your definition, if you were to kind of, explain in your words?
So I used to think the dark night of the soul was something I had been through. So I think there's a couple of different ways to look at it. You can say dark night of the soul, like as in like, oh, I've been through a dark night of the soul, like, not with a capital D and S and, all of that.
Yes.
Different periods where I look back and I'm like, oh, that feels like it was more like a dark night of the mind or the ego, where I'm like, oh my gosh, the world that I thought was true is not. And, and so my mind is opening. Then there's the heart through deep, deep grief and loss and love and all of that. I definitely had been through both of them. And I would have previously called that a dark night of the soul. And I don't think they're not that. But the big dark night of the soul, in my experience, and maybe there's more, we're all living and learning, but from my experience and understanding, and what I've written about with the dark night of the soul is it's a period of disillusionment. It's a period where everything that we thought we knew for sure, or even the tools and connection and how we connected to particularly the sacred, the divine, etc., has changed. There's a lot of ancient texts. There's one particular ancient text that talks about this called the cloud of unknowing. And it's talking about there being this cloud between you and the beloved, you and the God that you once knew. And so I see so many people going through this now as the planet is changing so drastically, that the tools that once served us earlier in our spiritual journey no longer do. Now, it doesn't mean that those tools are bad. It was that they worked at that stage, but now you have changed and more of you has come in. So what do you need now? What is the syllabus of your soul now that you've been called to go deeper? So for me, there was lots of ancestral healing, lots of nervous system healing, regulation, and just properly feeling. It's going to sound really depressive, but the agony of the human experience as well as the bliss, for me, becoming a mother, I became a mother as the world went into lockdown. I'm sure you guys had your own unique experience with borders of Australia being shut. Like you guys were on the other side of it, and I'm sure you were separate from family members. For me, I'd just become a mom, and that something about that just ripped my heart so deeply, because it just felt like it made me mourn as well, just this modern world we live in and how separate we all are, and how we have kind of taken over the earth in a sense, and these borders, like what even are these borders? Like, do you know? So we all have had our own personal syllabus during this time, which I think is different from any other. Yeah.
Oh, I love
Gosh,
that.
it's like
That's a big one.
we both went into our own introspection there, I think.
Yes.
It's like
Yeah.
it is that continual journey. Like we are continually evolving, continually having to upgrade, having to have new tools, having to have that sense of being in a void where what I used to know, it could have been yesterday, and then today I wake up and it's like I have no sense of self, no sense of identity. These tools aren't working anymore. And you've got to, you talk about creativity, you have to recreate, relearn who you are and step up to that experience continually. And I think what I reflect on what you're saying is we get to a point where all of the love and light spirituality, all the kind of happy, good stuff, keep your vibration high, gets you to a certain point. And then we also have to look at that darker side, that darker element, that healing that needs to be done. And even when you say ancestral healing, that lineage, looking back at the things that you've carried into your line or maybe from previous lives, there's so much of that we carry around with us, that when we start to tackle that, and that becomes a whole new Pandora's box to go through as well. So I have no doubt, and I'm like, Liz, I can't wait. Yes, it's on order already. I know I can't wait to get into the details of the book, to be able to, just roll around in all of the things that you have been able to, I guess, observe through your lifetime, and even through your teaching, because you are a natural teacher. So it is being able to learn from the book as well. And I just know that there will be so many insights in that. What else would you like to tell us about the book? Just if I'm someone who's out, because so many of the people who follow our show, they're itching to get out of the spiritual closet. They're spiritually curious. Some of them have been, they've been riding this roller coaster for quite a while. But if there is, to give them a flavor for what this book will give to them, what is the gift in this book?
Well, I think the gift in this book is and it's kind of woven through all my work, really, is that it is a doorway for you to connect in with the wisdom within, and to embrace fully what is, go down into the humbleness of the experience that you're going through, to realize that healing's always happening. It's not like we're striving to get to this finite space. That never happens. And so how can we do this as a way of life, rather than I just need this quick fix right now, And I think my wish for the book is that, because it is the subline is how to be held by life when it feels like everything's falling apart. My wish is that it it's like a companion during those periods when, it's not saying, I will solve everything for you, because each of us, our soul has its own unique syllabus, we desperately want the finite answer, but in my experience, that doesn't exist. It's unique to every single one of us. And so it's about strengthening the connection to the wisdom within, strengthening our connection to what is holding us, so that when things feel like they're trembling or changing or shaking or we're clinging, that we can allow ourselves to rest into something else that is holding us. And through resting into that holding, we can trust ourselves more. And I guess my other wish is that when I was writing it, I'm like, oh, I just want this book to be something that, when you have a friend, and I've definitely been that friend for other people, who's going through a really difficult time. Not that you have to go through a difficult time for the book to resonate. The book is about change. We're always changing. But when you do have a friend who's going through change, you want to help, but you can't, because it's it's there. You want to be there. And so my wish is that it's to give that to a friend, so it's kind of to help them in that way. That's what I kept on seeing as I was writing it. Because I think that this journey of living with an open heart and deeply endeavoring to keep our heart and eyes and mind open through the awakening experience, which is basically called life, it is something that requires a lot of courage, and the less alone we can feel in it, the more we can rest into something greater, the easier it is, less alone we feel.
Absolutely.
I can just already tell that this book is going to help so many people, Rebecca. Oh my goodness. Amazing. One last question I have is, I know that you referred to, being outside in nature and receiving, I guess, the channeling and all of the stuff of the book in nature. Is that something that is kind of your go-to when you feel like you need to kind of connect with the soul?
Yeah, always. It is. I'll do various different things, whether it's walking or often just laying down in nature back of I've got a practice I teach You guys have probably seen that like in membership or mystery school called earth pulsing, where you have the back of your heart against the earth, and you can feel your heartbeat if you tune in against
Yes.
the earth, and you imagine the earth's beat. And we know it has a rhythm as the tides come in and out, the seasons come and go, and we're part of that intelligent pulse. And so it's just like regulating with the pulse of the earth. That's my go-to practice for sure.
Oh, love it. Definitely be trying that as well.
Definitely, yes. So
Oh.
tell us, Rebecca, for our listeners, how can they get access to your book? What is the best way for them to find out more, not just about your book, but about the work that you do?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm all over social media. My name's Rebecca Campbell. Like Instagram is Rebecca Campbell _author, and you'll find it on all the channels. This book, Your Soul Had a Dream, Your Life Is It. It's available for pre-order, or if you're listening after, it's available. And you can just head to rebeccacampbell.me/Your Soul Had a Dream. Or just go to wherever you buy your books, whether it's Amazon, your local store. Australia still has a lot more bookstores, definitely, than England.
Yes.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Oh,
I
and
know
we
in
will share.
Australia it's going to be in big W. So there you go.
Oh, there we go.
There's
That's
no
a nice
excuse for
one.
anyone.
And we will put all of the links in the show notes anyway, so everyone can follow you. And Rebecca, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Keep doing the incredible work that you're doing out there in the world. I feel like you are definitely a change maker out there that's just probably having the best influence on so many people. So thank you for being part of the podcast as well.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks, Diane.
Competition time. If you have enjoyed this episode and are eager to get your hands on a copy of Rebecca's upcoming book, Your Soul Had a Dream, Your Life Is It, then keep an eye out for our competition on Instagram. We've also recorded Rebecca's top 3 tips for a spiritual awakening, which you can get access to with our exclusive Spiritual Awakening bundle when you join the Spiritual Renegades community. Links to Instagram and our Spiritual Renegades community are in the show notes.
That's it for another episode. Thank you for listening.
If you're looking for a place to feel at home and want to level up your spiritual game, head to our website, spiritualaf.co, to check out our upcoming online events and for information on how to join our Spiritual Renegades community.
Plus, leave us a 5-star review with an awesome comment on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and we're going to send you a free ticket to one of our Supercharged session events.
Until next time, stay spiritual as fuck.